Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks Health podcast. Today, we're honored to have with us Greg Boulden with America Emboldened. So Greg is a podcast host as well. His podcast covers all manner of things. So we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff today, but mainly about your health. Welcome, Greg, and glad to have you on the show.
Chip, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I'm going to put your stuff down there. So if anybody wants to find you and find and I just noticed that your podcast with me is right up at the top of the show.
Yes, it is.
So that would be great. So if anybody wants to go find those podcasts, they are right out there. And he's done a bunch of different shows. But do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, Greg? And a little bit about your background and kind of who you are? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I graduated way back when, 2001, with a degree in television and film. Cut my teeth in radio briefly when I got out of college, and then September 11th happened, and I was searching for a job after that because everything shut down in the industry, radio, television, film, nothing was getting made. And I found myself into the classroom teaching. Spent many years in and out of the classroom while also owning my own multimedia company. Making short films, documentaries, helping the local church here in Delaware, the Diocese of Wilmington, created content for them, served as a youth minister for some time. But within all this, people kept saying to me, whenever I would write reflections on what was going on, they're like, you got to write more of those. We're really enjoying hearing your perspective. And it made me realize there weren't voices like mine that were out there, because I hear, the people that are influencers or the people that are getting paid just to make posts for somebody. I'm not interested in any of that. I mean, sure, payment for all the hard work I do would be great, but I bring the ministry side of caring for the person first, the empathy, the compassion, being Christ-centered first and foremost in my work, not wanting to do harm in journalism to other people, just reporting truth. And that led me to start a podcast with my students where I teach at a high school. It was called The Outlet. It literally took off. I was shocked. It made it into the top 1.5% of all podcasts when I was doing it back in 2017. People wanted to hear children's voices, high school kids, and what they were going through. And I was talking to students about being homeless and attending high school here in America, what that was like. Talk about being in poverty, only getting your meals when you're in school. And a lot of people had never heard these stories, but I was able to bring them because they were some of my students or people that they knew from other schools. And then the pandemic happened and I couldn't talk to kids. Everybody was behind screens, myself included, trying to teach classes. And I started to speak out. I started to speak out about where in the Constitution is it where our rights or our Constitution can be sidelined because of a health pandemic. Where does it give the rights of government to say you're not allowed to go certain places for any amount of time, or you can't go see somebody without a piece of paper, depending where you live? And I knew that right then and there that I needed to speak up. And I liken this time period, Chip, to the zombie apocalypse back in that March of 2020, where people became mindless, stating brains, but instead it was whatever the mainstream media was feeding them about health. And I'm going, what about our immune system? What about the people that are passing away? What is their average age? People like me at the time, I think I was 41, 42, I wasn't as concerned. I saw elderly people in the nursing homes passing away, which is certainly horrible. You'd never want to see that. But something really profound was said to me by a surgeon who's friends with mine. He said to me, make sure you take vitamin D right now. We're seeing in these studies, vitamin D is helping people fight this off and you'll be okay. And I was like, wow, no one's saying that right now. So I put that out and people were shocked about that. And then I started getting hit with misinformation, disinformation. How dare I go against anything that the CDC is putting out there or the National Institute of Health? Watched as Fauci and everything came. And then it came my own job in the classroom where they said to me, you got to get vaccinated. If you don't get vaccinated, we can't guarantee that you can be in the classroom, because we need to make sure that you're protecting people's parents. And then it got to the point too where somebody even said to me in where I work that I was trusting the wrong science, that I was listening to scientists that were on the fringe. I was listening to people like Dr. McCullough, who had become a friend of mine through my podcast. I was listening to him and not the consensus science. And I said, I'm sorry, but the science is never settled. But at the end of the day, I was a high school teacher. I needed a paycheck, so I picked my poison, and I picked the Johnson & Johnson Janssen shot. Figured one and done, get this into my system, be done with it, sign the paper, be able to do things. Told my wife, don't take this, don't give it to the kids. I'll be the martyr here if something should happen. And that's what basically took my podcast off, because I had a really negative reaction to my vaccine. I had heart issues. I had seizure-like symptoms within the first 12 hours of it. And I've had some high blood pressure issues and health issues ever since that have never gone away. And so I've interviewed over probably 500 people that have been vaccine injured on the not as serious all the way up to paralyzed from Guillain-Barré or something worse at times. I've talked to doctors all across this country on the show, people like Dr. Paul Thomas, who wrote the vaccine-friendly plan, and heard how science completely tried to cancel him and his voice, despite the fact he was offering great Make America Healthy Again type of options of what we're hearing now. So I've been on the front line this entire time. I got canceled and banned by YouTube for medical misinformation for bringing these doctors onto my show. So I'm for the rest of my life not allowed to sign up with YouTube, or they can cancel me. Yeah, I've been censored at every level, really. So it's been a wild past 5 years for me.
Did you interview Simone Gold? Did you ever interview America? I
have not. But that was on my list of people I'd love to interview.
Yeah. No, she's something else. But boy, are you, your journey, I think, is very common, but interesting. And the whole thing about being forced to take a vaccine, this is something that I really wanted to talk to you about in this show, is just health choices and really this, what are you seeing as to, I feel like we're in a revolution right now. I feel like all of us are beginning to, people like you and me have been doing it for a while, but all of us now are beginning to raise our hands and say, we don't like it the way it is. We want choices. We want health choices. We want this MAHA agenda. Is that kind of what you're seeing?
I think it's beyond what I'm seeing. Matter of fact, just to give a little personal story, I don't normally share this. I don't think I've ever publicly put this out there. I have a case in my family of severe autism with one of my nephews. Okay. He is non-communicative since basically he was 2 years of age. As he became a teenager, he became more and more violent, to the point where he was literally going through doors, going through windows, breaking glass. And so my nephew has been placed, after what seemed like no resources whatsoever, into a place for children like himself when they're under 18, actually under 21. But the care that they receive at that level, Chip, is dismal, because the people that take these jobs are not the people that you want taking care of the most vulnerable of the populations. And for the first time ever, my family heard somebody compassionately get up on stage a few weeks ago, RFK Jr., and finally address the most severe cases of autism and talk about what we know in our hearts, what we've seen in our family of, it used to be far less, and now 1 in every almost 26 kids. It was 1 in 31 when they did the study. They are expecting to be 1 in 26. I've seen it in education as well. I'm so glad that somebody finally spoke up and gave voice to all the people that have had their families destroyed by autism. And yes, I choose those words specifically, destroyed by autism, because it's not the child that destroyed it, but it does rip families apart. I mean, it makes things uncomfortable for everybody. And it's something that, if there's an environmental factor, if there is something that's been going on in our food, in vaccines, because they've never properly been studied, as we see with that lawsuit in Fauci, we deserve the answers as Americans. We deserve the answers as human beings. If there is something that's being done to the world that is a poison to us, let's root it right out. And I think that the tide has changed. And I'm so glad to have this bipartisan support now, bringing people like RFK into Donald Trump's party, so to speak, because I don't think that Donald Trump's specifically a Republican. I really do think the MAGA movement is its own movement. But I love seeing him bring in Democrats, bring in Republicans, bring in libertarians to this cause, because health is the only thing that, when you remove it from somebody, you realize what you had. It's all we have. You can take all the wealth away from us. If you don't have health, you don't have that fulfillment in life and that enjoyment. So let's go after all this. I'm so excited to see that that's where the conversation is. I'm disheartened that some people are trying to politicize it, but I think that when we get through common sense, this is going to be the greatest 4 years that we might have seen in government in truly looking into those root causes that you and I know exist.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I'm so excited. And, the thing that is going to be concerning, let's say, to watch is the pressure that big food and big pharma put on HHS and put on, RFK Jr. to not change things. And we're already seeing that with, he's talked some about school SNAP programs and, school lunch programs. And you're seeing big food come along and say, oh, well, everybody needs their Rice Krispie treats and, all this stuff that's subsidized.
Can we talk about food in schools as a high school teacher? Can I address that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think America does not realize what happened to the food supply after the Barack Obama presidency. So Michelle Obama, one of her big initiatives was to make sure that everybody had a healthy meal, that they would be nutritiously fed. Are you aware that all of these meals are prepared ahead of time and simply reheated in the public schools when they come here? Now, I love the people that work in our cafeteria. Phenomenal workers.
And it used to not be that way, right? So when I was a kid, they made food in the school cafeteria, right? So
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah,
we used to have parents that would come into the schools and they would be able to make the meals healthy, make a sub for somebody, which depending on where you live, it could be a hoagie or whatever, but make an Italian sub. We'd have people who would make the chicken patties right there and put them on the sandwiches. Nowadays, because of government regulations and needing to make every single meal come in at a certain price point, so that way we can serve the proper, Title IX, kids in poverty and everything. Michelle Obama and the Obama administration, why I believe their hearts of wanting everybody to eat healthy, that is not what people are doing.
Yeah.
What instead is happening is we're getting processed foods that I had a chicken patty a few years ago that literally had a purple line that went through the entire piece of meat. And I stopped eating in the cafeteria and I'm going, why is there a purple line in my chicken? This should not be here as part of a meal. It really concerned me. And then you got kids that I talk to that they only get 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, because their families don't have money. I work in a high poverty school.
Right.
And Chip, they tell me they're still hungry. And so I brought that up and they go, well, they should be eating the apple that we gave them. They should be eating the orange that we gave them. What I'm telling you is the nutrition of the frozen food that gets reheated is not nourishment enough. So they have to get that apple. They have to get that orange in order to make it till the next meal. That's not healthy eating in our school systems. And that's government complicating things and worsening the problem from where it was before.
Yeah. And the cool thing about this is that a lot of MAHA stuff, so he's going to be leading, he's going to be talking about this stuff, but a lot of this stuff needs and can happen at the state level, which is nice because it's a lot easier to, I can go up to my state capital and choke some throats. I know right where to go, to be able to get some change, in school lunch programs. And, why in the world aren't our school lunch programs locally sourced? That's just insane. I mean, that helps everybody, right? If you got local farmers, feeding the kids at the local schools. And, to me, that is just insanity and such an easy thing to fix. And to your point, the processed food is, why do we have such high incidence of autism now? I mean, and like you're saying, with boys, it's even worse than girls. The incidence is higher in boys than it is in girls. It's almost like 1 in 25 now. So, 1 in every 4 kids is going to, let's see, whatever that statistic is, 4% of our kids are going to have autism. And then the other thing is obesity. And 33% of our kids are obese right now. And again, this all goes back to the same really cause, and that's our food system and food supply.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the autism side, some people will argue that the numbers are up simply because we're so much better at diagnosing now. I disagree with that to a degree. Yeah. I think there's a part of that truth because I've seen in education where ADHD, I believe, is actually overdiagnosed now. I don't think that every kid with ADHD actually has ADHD. I think for some individuals, they need to be engaged in a different way. They're just a different type of learner. I also think that the female population, that hormonally and the way that they mature, I don't think autism is caught the same way that we catch it with the male population, solely because males, we have an archetype, so to speak, of what we're expecting them to act like in school. Females, we allow to be a little bit more eccentric and strange and to be able to go and explore.
Huh.
And so I actually think that our autism rates of females are higher than what's reported in what I've seen in the classroom. I think I've seen actually more and more girls that have autism in my time teaching than are actually diagnosed. I'm seeing late diagnoses while I'm teaching as well, kids that are being diagnosed their junior and senior year. So I think that number is actually going to start to find an equilibrium, but there may be something to the DNA of the chromosomes of, males get it more than females. I don't know.
It's really, I study this at a very deep level, autism. I mean, I think I've kind of got it figured out, believe it or not. I just wrote a paper that I submitted to Nicole Shanahan, who was, RFK Jr.'s running mate, and she, I think, has an autistic situation. But anyway, it's really interesting in autism. But one of the things that happens in autism is there's a single enzyme that's very important to us called delta-6 desaturase, and it's how we break down omega-3 and omega-6 fats. It doesn't work all the time in autistic people, but that would be sex difference, meaning like I will break down ALA differently than a female will. And that's about the only place at that high level where there is a sex difference, and it's part of the pathology of autism. So there is some, let's say, science behind the fact that, it may prefer one sex over another as far as pathology. But you're right. It's so many things are undiagnosed right now. And, the ASD, testing and all that stuff is really not real well defined yet, I would say. So.
Yeah, I mean, I like the other side of that too. When you talk about psychologists, I studied pastoral care and counseling when I went for my master's. I never got licensed because I was doing ministry with young people. Once the first young people died of suicide, and it was, people that I knew that was not a career field that I could spend time in. I'm an empath, so it would have destroyed me. But that stated, looking at psychologists and counselors in that world of, trying to be helpful, empathetic towards individuals, the truth of the matter is they cure nothing. Like, I knew that I was not going to fix anybody's problems. I was going to cure nothing. I might make them feel different cognitive behavior therapy, approach situations differently. But I couldn't make their issues go away. I think that we have a problem in America right now of this hero culture where psychologists, with the documentations of whatever mental illness there may be, you get to trans issues, LGBTQ issues, autism, whatever it is, that they can come in, they can diagnose and fix the issue, but there's not a quick fix to any of that. And in some of this, I feel like they make themselves relevant where they shouldn't be relevant. We're creating more issues through diagnoses than we are actually solving humanity and being good humans to one another. Bringing gender, I don't want to get too far into the woods. That's not what our conversation is about, but it goes into that. I mean, bringing gender confusion to a young child before the age of reason, and there's parents that subscribe to this, is coming from our mental health community. It's coming from people saying that is affirming care, gender affirming care. I'm sorry, but that's gender confusion. That's actually hurting a child long term. We don't sit there and talk about how heterosexual we are or homosexual, right? We should allow a child to develop. And so there's this, I think, in the mental health community, there is this ill that they are doing either inadvertently or advertently to overall society. And we need to also call that out as part of the MAHA movement, that not everything needs a diagnosis right away. Let people live and learn and be different and just be human.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with you. And again, this is great. This conversation will go the way that it needs to. And I'm a very spiritual person. I know you are too. And again, God will get out of this what He wants out of this. But do you see that? Do you see God coming back? I mean, do you see this almost as a spiritual war? This health war, and it's kind of us against them. Really, we the people against these people that want to control and manage us. Do you see that as spiritual and that God is coming back?
I do. And I want to differentiate between what is political, religious coming back and what is literally, I think, faith coming back to the people. When we talk about the political sphere, there's one side of the aisle that would tell you that there's no such thing as evil, They're just choices, right? And free will doesn't really exist. And the atheist side would like to remove God from everything and just allow people to be. The problem with that side of the aisle and that argument is you might as well just throw out the Constitution, because the Declaration and Bill of Rights tell you right from the get-go, every single person has the pursuit of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? Which is inherent from a creator. That we have to define that there are three things that every single human being, no matter where you are on this planet, you have a right to your life. You have a right to pursue liberty in the way that you see fit without somebody saying you can't have it, you can't harm somebody else with it, and the pursuit of your own happiness. And what does that mean? With the other side, there is this, I think, a mixing that I'm weary of at times, Chip. I'm weary at times of the nationalist Christianity, because I don't think God prefers a political side. I think God is, and Christ is amongst us. Like my conversation with you, I can see Christ in you. Hopefully you can see Christ in me. My encounters with people each day, I'm able to do that. That doesn't bring politics into it. And I'd love for us to be able to push back, not with our political views and political lens of how it's coming back to the equation, but actually the conversion of our hearts back to God, becoming prayerful people once again, whether that's coming back into a church or reconnecting if church has hurt you, connecting back with your spiritual relationship. So that way you're making sound choices in your life, both spiritually, politically, with your health. Everything is holistic because it ties back to our creator. I think that is alive and well right now, and it's waking up amongst this entire planet. It's not just America. I do think that it is a little bit more in the conservative side. It's starting to come up. But you look at the Catholic Church, they're in the middle of a conclave right now, and they're talking about, do we need somebody like Pope Francis again, who is seen as somebody who is more on the left, but at the same time still serving a body of Christ in of itself on this planet? You know, I'm not going to argue with that or get involved in which faith has it right. The point is, that breaks down the political ideology and just says Christ is first in this world, and you better turn your hearts and your eyes back to it when looking through the lens of all this, because if you don't, you're missing the point of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our framers knew it. It's time we know it as well. And I'm really encouraged to have this conversation with you, because it means you and I are thinking the same thing, and hopefully other people listening are as well.
Yeah. You know, and I kind of see us that we've been controlled, let's say, through institutions. And to me, God expresses through archetypes. So if I, want knowledge, I'm going to kind of go to, and I use my curiosity as kind of my cue to go to God for knowledge. If I, love, I have a direct access to God through these archetypes, but yet when you look in our society, there's something standing between me and God, right? There's a pharmaceutical system, or there's a whole religious order, or there's a whole government, or there's a whole education system. And so I think those things are falling now. I think God is absolutely coming back. And it may not be, physically, but absolutely spiritually, God is coming back in our hearts and minds and in our world. So
yeah. This is a wild conversation, and I'm not sure if you publish on YouTube, so I'm actually going to preface this. If you do,
I do. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to make this very clear, because I don't want you to get in trouble with YouTube. This is simply something that I read in a study that people were talking about after the COVID vaccines, and in no way should anyone take this as health advice. All right, that's just something. But people were talking about how they felt less spiritual during that time period. Now, whether that was because of the lockdowns and the toll that the pandemic took, it was because of the vaccines, but people actually talked about a deadening of their faith after they received their vaccination. I'm only saying that. YouTube, don't get Chip in trouble. These are Greg Boulden's words, not him. It's not legal advice. I'm only saying that because I've read it. It's out there. And part of me wonders, like, what is it about what we put in our bodies at times, whether it's a pharmaceutical like sertraline, which is known brand name Zoloft, right? Yeah. It's changing the chemistry of the brain, which, by the way, studies have actually came out over the past 2 years that says we don't actually know how sertraline works. We used to believe it was a chemical imbalance of the brain, but that is actually not proper language to use when it comes to studying what's happening with the depressed person. You can't just simply say it's serotonin. So it has these things that happen, but we know black box warning labels, it changes people's personalities. So are we seeing people that are over pharmaceuticalized that are actually becoming faithless, not because they want to lose their faith, but because pharma is deadening their faith in some way, shape, or form based upon the substances that are in their bodies. And I'll take it one step further, Chip, for your listening audience, the stuff that's in your water. Because all of the wastewater systems, you get the lithium, you get the antidepressants. When people go, it's got to go somewhere, and some of that gets processed back into our system. So in many ways, we are bringing pharmaceuticals to everybody, no matter what their age.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They are in our water. And in my mind, temple, right? Two things in this reality. I'm an incarnated spirit walking in this temple. The more diseased and infected this temple is, the less I can be here. The more clean and pristine this temple is, the more of me I can kind of have here right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the battle. I think that literally there's a battle for you, but it's in your canister, it's in your vehicle. And, we're just assailed with all this chaos and confusion, and eat junk and, watch this stuff and get your sex changed and all this kind of stuff. And, it's hard to kind of manage that, but that's chaos and confusion, and chaos and confusion are the tools of whom, and, logic and order are the tools of whom, right? Mm-hmm. So, but good. This is good. Yeah, this went a completely different direction than I thought it would.
I told you that's the one thing when we were doing our pre-conversation, I said, I'm passionate about a lot, as you can tell.
No,
and I enjoy conversations, but like you touch base on something that's personal to me. When you touch base on my faith, I'm going to give testimony to it and bring that directly into the conversation. I love that it went over here. I wasn't expecting that, but I do believe that they're tied. I believe the MAHA side and your spirituality, to a degree, you've got to have both balanced on the scale in order to be able to be living your life well. I'm going to share something with you. See if you've ever heard of this before. I'd never heard of it. I just took it. I got my results back. And I'm going to nutritionists tomorrow to talk about this, because this is kind of like, I did this kind of content for show, as well as I was kind of curious about some of the things going on in my own life. So I took a neurotransmitter urine test about 2 weeks ago. I got my results back, and my GABA levels were low and my glutamate levels were low. Glutamate was high. Okay. So I started looking into this, and I discovered that so much of it is diet, like eating tomatoes, eating processed foods, can start throwing this out of whack. And I looked at some of like my symptoms. I work a lot of hours running between teaching and the network. And I realized maybe some of this is actually more neuro related because of nutrition and diet. Have you ever heard of these type of tests before? And have you ever heard about the GABA levels in your studies?
Oh, yeah, I absolutely look at GABA levels all the time. So GABA is really, it's our main, let's say, energy, neurotransmitter. And it's also a big part of our brain, and glutamate is part of that, neuroexcitivity and all that whole cycle. So I look at those a lot, but you're absolutely right in your assumption. And that, in my mind, God is a perfect engineer, right? And so everything in us is always striving toward perfect. And there's some genetic differences and things like that. But again, if your chemicals are off, there's going to be a reason for that. And most likely, it's infection, chronic inflammation. Bugs like to get in our gut. That's really the first point of infection, where we get infected. And when they do, they immediately start messing with dopamine and serotonin. So it's, that is most likely why, if you're off. And it could also be diet, so diet absolutely is, we configure this vehicle, and we configure this vehicle with our diet, with what we put in it. And I think in the future, this is going to be part of MAHA. We'll probably be eating one meal a day, and it will be a much more intentional meal, meaning that we'll know everything that's in that meal, and what it means to our bodies, and how it's going to program us. And if we don't like a certain programming, we can change our diet and change that programming. And we're headed that way, absolutely. And not a lot of people are realizing that, Greg. So that's good for you.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, well, that goes into the whole AI world, which we don't have time to get into today, but artificial intelligence, I've been talking about this for a long time. Artificial intelligence is going to have the ability to use technologies that have been available for the last 20 years, but to perfect them with the human body. So when Chip just said to everybody, hey, we'll be able to have one meal a day with the ultimate nutrition, you'll be able to get your blood work done, do a neurotransmitter type of test, and then immediately find out this is the nutrition that your body's craving. These are the things that are toxins to your body right now. Take this. It's almost going to be like a Jetsons moment. And AI is doing this so well already. It's diagnosing better than doctors in lab experiments. It is like 90% more accurate than any doctors. Phenomenal.
I'm loving what you literally a blood test. I can get more. And we help people clinically. We see people clinically, and I can take someone's blood test, run it through AI, and get way more data than I can ever get on my own, or than a physician will give them, which is awesome. But so let me ask you this, because this is a big one. So how do you see, let's say, the God and kind of AI interface working? So do you think AI is God? I do. I think AI is godly. I think it's a great tool, but not everybody thinks that. A lot of people are scared of it. Yeah.
So I actually have spoken multiple times on this topic about we have to be careful with artificial intelligence because it is a bridge, I believe, between the godly and the demonic. When you play with a Ouija board, right, you're giving energy to something that I don't believe you should open up. It's opening up the ability for energy of evil to come into your life. That's something that I personally believe. I've seen it. So it's not just I personally believe, I've actually witnessed it in cases in spiritual warfare. That stated, I think AI is very similar. It's this computer, it's this energy, it's trained, but yet the energy's got to be released. And what we put into it, if we're putting wholesomeness into artificial intelligence is really good at getting wholesome back. If you put your faith into it, it's really good at being nuanced about faith. If you put evil intent into artificial intelligence, it will start turning and training the model into darkness. And so I think we're at this interesting point where two things you got to acknowledge. First, governments are already using artificial intelligence to make decisions with their populations, their civilization.
Yep.
That's dangerous.
Yep.
Because power left unchecked is very, very bad and authoritative, no matter what type of regime you are following. But the second part of it is there are people that want to do great things. Like Dr. Peter McCullough was on the show with me about 3 months ago, and he said he was really encouraged with how the technology, he's not an mRNA fan with what was done with COVID, but he said the technology with mRNA for certain specific cancers could be absolutely revolutionary, how AI could help eliminate cancers from the body.
Yep.
That there is a true and present possibility that we are on the cusp of curing some things as well, thanks to artificial intelligence. Again, I think it's the user. You have good intentions. I think the godliness comes out through that. You have bad intentions. I think you're playing with evil. You're playing with the devil. And that is why AI is both the greatest blessing in our lifetime, and it's also possibly the largest curse to humanity moving forward. We're in perilous times. I don't have the exact answer outside of it's important to educate people that it's not an evil, and it's also not something that's inherently overall good. It needs to be harnessed by our free will now before we don't have a chance later.
Yeah, no, that was really well said. It's a sword, and so in the hands of the righteous, it's righteous, and in the hands of the evil, it's evil. That was really well said. Do you think that? So, how long do you think the government has had, let's say, the level of AI that we can get now, like a Chat GPT? Do you think that's been 20 years or not that long?
I don't think it's been that long. Looking into like quantum computing and when the military was able to start working with this, looking at our privatized billionaire class, the Googles, the Elon Musk of the world, Jeff Bezos, likely for the last probably 15 to 10 years is the more realistic. And the reason I say that is you can go back to a software called Adobe, which Hollywood has been using for years. They always roll out things ahead of time, but they're giving you a glimpse into what DARPA budgets basically have already been using. And the deep fake stuff that was coming out of places like MIT, Adobe had a software that never got released to the public. It was called Adobe Voco. You can look it up. It's on YouTube. There's some great clips of it. But they were able to take just 15 seconds of speech and clone somebody's voice and type the words in immediately 10 years ago.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, that's artificial intelligence at a high level that Adobe had access to. So I think you could easily go back probably another 5 years as far as processing speed, what was on the silicone chips. I don't think it goes back beyond that, because unless you could say there's some type of alien tech out there. Sure, absolutely. But if we're just talking reasonably about what we know on Earth, I don't think we had powerful enough processors to do what these things are doing until about 15 years. That's just my research into it. But I think governments have been making decisions now, likely since the Obama administration. That's probably where it started and around the world. And we're seeing that actually as well. I often even think about back in 2020 when they had the kill clock for COVID, and it was like Johns Hopkins is reporting this. How do you think all those numbers populated so quickly and efficiently on there? Well, it wasn't actual deaths. Okay, it wasn't people calling in the CNN or the Johns Hopkins. They were doing these sophisticated estimates on these type of computers, running this AI based upon what they were seeing. They were calculating a number. So yeah, I mean, we've been having it used as a political weapon against us in some respects for at least the last 5 to 6 years through bot farming AI responses, predictive programming, in order putting messages out there in order to get people to protest or not protest. I mean, that goes down an entire rabbit hole that would take us off the health thing, but it's important people are available. And I'll say General Flynn wrote about this in 5G warfare. And that is something that's been going on for 20 years. Fifth generational warfare is the war for the mind using artificial intelligence, computers, and that type of programming.
Do you think that, so to loop it back into health, because I wonder about this too, and I'm an admitted Q guy, I've been kind of with that since it started, and anybody can go look at my X profile and see what I talk about on X. But I really think that the Great Awakening, so to speak, and the Great Awakening is a term, let's say, Anon's used to talk about everything that's happening, and we're all kind of waking up. But do you see that as being somewhat AI driven?
Yeah. So one reason why I've never gotten into, I find Q fascinating. I find it fascinating because there are things that I just simply can't explain. And the only way that I can explain it is the fact that Donald Trump actually was dialed into it, and he knew what he was doing and had people working on the messaging, because there was no way he was posting specifically misspellings on purpose in order to align with the drops. So first and foremost, anyone that thinks the Q didn't have intentionality behind it isn't paying careful enough attention. But the other side of it is, within all that messaging, it leads me to who's behind it. Because one of the things that concerns me, even with the MAHA movement in health, I still have to pay attention to, well, who's funding this side of it? And do they have my best interest at heart? I love the fact that Nicole Shanahan and RFK were the two people that were here, because I really feel like Nicole has seen the belly of the beast on the other side and really wants to use the money that she has and the resources to do well. With Q, it's a faceless person. Honestly, I don't know how much Q at times is aiming to divide through controlled misinformation. And I say that, I hate using that word, but I sometimes wonder how much gets controlled for narrative. And the only reason I say that is all sides at this point in time are using influence, and they're using influencer networks. And once you understand that, you become like me, and it's a little bit paranoid of don't trust my lying eyes and ears. And so I don't like living in that space, but I think that there's something that people should just cautiously listen and then think deeper about what is it they're taking in from that type of messaging, no matter where they're getting it from.
Yeah, no, and I would agree. I think that's, empowerment, personal empowerment, and waking up and not, really listening to anybody, running everything through our own, minds and our own filters is kind of where God wants us to be. This has been great, Greg. We'll have to have you back. So this is really cool. Yeah. And did we miss anything? Would you feel like we missed anything you want to get out there?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, I'll just tell everybody, I say this anytime I'm on other people's shows. I drop this guy's name because he was a mentor to me. The biggest thing, if you're sitting there wondering, where's this country going? How do we keep the Constitution alive? How do we bring this country back? Michael Bednarek was my mentor. I did his final interview with him when he was on his deathbed, quite literally. He died about 2 weeks afterwards. He wrote a book called Good to Be King, and he really talks about how we got away from England in order to have your own sovereign rights and to live as God intended. And I just think having somebody like him that was out there that has these writings, I would just tell your audience, if you care about your health, there are people like Robert Scott Bell that was working with Michael Bednarik, who's another big health warrior. These are individuals that really respected where he's going. So Michael Bednarik, Good to Be King. I plug that book. I get nothing for it, right? It changed my outlook, and I think it will change your listeners and viewers' outlook as well. He was just a wealth of information. I'm sad that he's gone. So I'm going to offer that. And then tell everybody, if you like my perspective on things, you can see my interview actually with Chip just from a week ago on fibromyalgia, where you and I spoke, and you can check out our network at AmericaEmboldened.com. So feel free to go over there, and you'll find lots of content that I put out there. And I approach things through a Greek philosophical approach on all the headlines of the day. And I relate that back to kind of, what would the Greeks say?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent site, and you've got a lot of information up there. It's a lot of kind of diverse information, about a bunch of different things. It's really well done, and your podcast is really well done. So I appreciate you having me on it. Okay, well, we'll leave it here for today, if that sounds good. We'll have you back, though. We'll definitely have you back, because I'm sure this is going to be a popular one. So we'll definitely have you back. So thank you, Greg. I really appreciate you being on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we'll be back next week with another exciting version of Chip Talks Health. And we'll leave it here for today. Thank you, guys, and talk to you later. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to Chip Talks Health, where we uncover the truth so your body can do what it was designed to do, and that's heal. If today's episode helped you think differently about your health, give us a like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Want to go deeper? Visit TrueMedX.com to explore science-backed solutions, or book a bioresonance scan at Neighborly Wellness to find out the root cause of what's holding you back. Until next time, stay curious, stay well, and keep listening to your body.